All new at 5:30, CBS 6 continues our weekly Power in Politics segment, New York's pretrial discovery process under the microscope as Governor Kathy Hochul continues her quest to change the 2019 discovery reforms, holding up the state budget along the way. Tom Eschen has been reporting on this since she proposed these changes in January. He joins us live now from our Studio B. Tom.
Thank you, JT. As you mentioned, it's the reason New York doesn't have a budget right now. It might sound like a bit of a complicated issue, discovery reform, but these changes have a ripple effect and an impact on a lot of different people and aspects of the judicial system right now. The victims, the people accused, judges, law enforcement's involved in this as well. So we sat down with Albany County District Attorney Lee Kindlon, who's been advocating alongside the governor for these changes. And we did it in his office, just a stone's throw from the Capitol building. Why have you been involved in these conversations regarding discovery?
Because I think I have a unique voice to bring to the discussion. Obviously, the first 18 years of my professional career in Albany, I spent as a hard-charging, fire-breathing defense attorney, which gives me a certain perspective. And now I'm the district attorney in Albany County in charge of making sure that all of the discovery gets from law enforcement, various investigating agencies, to the defendants and their attorneys. So, I want to make sure that my voice is heard at the table during the discussions, and so everybody gets a full picture of what's going on.
Why do you think changes are needed to the 2019 reforms that were put in place?
So the 2019 reforms were great because we talk about the bad old days when, as an attorney, you didn't get any important materials until almost the eve of trial. And, I wrote an op-ed for the Times-Union back in February where I talked about a case in which I didn't get an important piece of proof turned over until a few days before the trial was supposed to go. And I don't want to go back there. Nobody wants to go back that way. But any law passed is going to have some unintended consequences, and that's what legislation is for maybe now, to clean up some of those unintended consequences of the reforms that were passed 5 years ago. So the most common example I cite is the growth of this cottage industry of discovery compliance motions that can be hundreds of pages long. And it's all whether or not the district attorney's office has turned over the body camera footage from the fifth cop to appear on scene. And if we haven't turned it over, if we haven't turned over anything related to, it's a very broad scope, anything related to the case, then we risk dismissal. And that's a really harsh punishment when it comes to the prosecution, especially when sometimes failing to turn over a piece of paper, it might not be relevant to the case at hand. And so what we're trying to do is draw down the turnover to what's relevant to a case, because why turn over irrelevant material, but stuff that's relevant to the prosecution. But also build into the legislation now instead of just dismissal, build in this idea that there's a more pragmatic solution. Maybe the defense gets an adjournment when stuff gets turned over late. Maybe there can be preclusion of discovery if it's turned over late. Dismissal's always on the table still as potential remedy. But we just want to make sure that there's some sort of proportional response to perhaps late disclosure. So, those ideas have been part of the discussion from day one.
Can some of those other options, other than dismissal, be taken advantage of? I just say that from the standpoint of there is the concern that an individual and those that are for justice reform might say, this is going to cause more people to stay in jail and have their trial go on longer, months, years, because the prosecution isn't being as forthcoming as they should be.
Sure. Look, I understand that there's always these what ifs, these speculative harms that occur out there, and dismissal is, as I understand, is always going to be on the table as a remedy for the courts. So there's always going to be the ultimate sanction that can be leveled against a DA's office if they don't turn over materials. But I can tell you, we're not going backwards. I'm not sitting around trying to think of ways to, let's not disclose things to the defense.
You did tell me that you did take advantage of some of these things as a defense attorney, right?
Oh, sure.
You did say that in the past.
Yeah, in that interview we had on South
street.
Pearl. Yeah,
On the street, yeah.
Sure, but because that's what a defense attorney does. The only concern you have as a defense attorney is for your client in this case, which that's the job. My job now is different. My job now is to worry about the entire criminal justice system and making sure it works well for everybody involved. And yeah, I still have a deep-seated concern for how a defendant's case is going. I want to make sure that they have access to everything that they need, right? But now my purview is just bigger and it's different. So I am now charged with worrying about victims, worrying about the men and women of law enforcement, and making sure that their jobs and all their hard work is rewarded, because they're sinking their time, their energy, their passion, all these things into their jobs. So I got to make sure that I can look at them in the eye and say, all the hard work you did paid off.
Now, over the course of the last few days, there's been reports of deals getting done and undone on discovery. Nothing official at this point, though lawmakers are optimistic that they could come to a consensus by the end of next week on the budget as a whole. We'll keep you updated on that. Back to you, JT.
All right, Tom Eschen in Studio B for us. Tom, thanks very much. They go much deeper into the district attorney's stance as well and why body cameras are a part of this conversation. The podcast goes live at 5 a.m. Friday morning. You can scan the QR code on your screen and listen wherever you get your podcasts.